The actor's name was Marcus Vail. He was 26 years old. He had one picture behind him, a studio thriller that had made $42 million on a $12 million budget and had turned him, in the particular arithmetic of Hollywood, from a face into a name. He had a manager, a publicist, an entertainment lawyer, and an agent at CAA who had recently negotiated for him a co-starring role in a Malpaso production shooting in San Francisco in the spring of 1993. It was the most significant job of his career. He knew it, his team knew it, the studio knew it. What nobody on his team had thought to explain to him was what it meant to walk onto a Clint Eastwood set and behave as though the rules were negotiable. He found out on the 14th day of principal photography. He found out in 20 seconds. Here is the story. San Francisco, California, March 1993. Day 14 of principal photography on A Perfect World. The production had been running clean. Eastwood ran sets the way he ran everything, with a minimum of noise and a maximum of forward motion. No wasted takes, no extended rehearsals on camera time, no gap between what the director asked for and what the crew delivered. The people on that set had largely worked with Eastwood before, some of them across many years, and they had absorbed his rhythms the way water absorbs the shape of the channel it runs through. The days started at 6. The first shot was always ready before the call. Lunch was on time. The afternoon light was respected. Nobody stood around waiting for a decision, because the decisions had been made before the day began. It was the kind of set that made actors from other productions feel, when they arrived, like they had walked into a different version of the industry, quieter, faster, more serious, less theatrical about itself. Some of them found it uncomfortable. The good ones found it clarifying. Marcus Vail found it inconvenient. He had arrived on production 2 weeks earlier with the full apparatus of a rising star. An assistant, a personal trainer who drove in from Marin County 3 mornings a week, specific requirements about his trailer's proximity to set, and a collection of notes from his acting coach that ran to 11 pages and addressed, among other things, the conditions under which he worked best. The crew absorbed all of it without comment. This was not unusual. Stars had requirements. The machinery of a production accommodates requirements. It does so without editorializing, because the machinery is professional, and the time spent editorializing is time not spent making the picture. What the crew noted, quietly, between themselves, in the specific shorthand that crew members use when they are being careful, was that Vail was slow to set and fast to give notes to the director. They noted that he frequently requested additional time before takes for reasons that were not entirely clear. They noted that he addressed the first AD by the wrong name for the first 4 days and did not appear to notice the correction when it was offered. None of this was catastrophic. None of it was even particularly unusual for a 26-year-old who had been told repeatedly that he was talented and was still in the early phase of believing it without qualification. It sat at the edge of the set, the way a small, persistent smell sits at the edge of a room, present enough to notice, not yet bad enough to address. That changed on day 14. The scene was a two-hander. Vail and a veteran character actor named Bernard Coles, who had been working in television and film since 1971, and who had been cast in the picture specifically because Eastwood had worked with him twice before and trusted his instincts completely. Coles was 61 years old. He was not famous. He was the kind of actor who worked consistently across 4 decades without ever becoming the kind of name that opened a picture, because the industry had a specific slot for men like him: supporting, reliable, technically precise, and men in that slot did not often leave it. He had learned everything he knew about his craft from sets and not from schools, and what he knew was considerable. The first take had gone well. The camera operator, a man named Doug Struthers who had shot 4 Malpaso pictures, had indicated with a small motion of his head, the language of experienced crew, that the frame had been clean throughout. The sound mixer had his headphones around his neck, which meant the audio was good. The director of photography had not moved from his monitor. Eastwood, sitting in his chair to the left of the camera, had watched the playback on a small monitor with his coffee in his hand. He had said nothing for a moment. Then he had said, "Let's go again, same energy, tighter on the turn." This was normal. This was, in fact, the best possible version of the situation. A clear, specific note on a take that had been good, pointing toward a take that could be better. The first AD called for reset. The crew moved. 40 people doing their specific jobs simultaneously, the way they always did, quiet and coordinated and purposeful. Marcus Vale stood at his mark. He looked at the crew around him, the camera team repositioning, the gaffer adjusting a light 2 feet to his left, a script supervisor moving into her position 8 feet away with her clipboard. He turned to his personal assistant, who was standing at the edge of the set. He said, loudly enough that there was no ambiguity about who was meant to hear it, that he needed the set cleared of non-essential personnel before the next take. He said that the presence of crew members within his eyeline during emotional scenes compromised his process. He said that his acting coach had addressed this specifically. He said it the way people say things when they have confused comfort with necessity. The first AD, a woman named Sandra Birch who had been running sets for 11 years and whose face, in moments of professional challenge, went to a careful neutral that communicated nothing, looked at Vale for 2 seconds. She opened her mouth. She did not get to speak. From the left of the camera, a sound, the specific creak of canvas that a director's chair makes when a man who has been sitting still in it for some time stands up. One sound. That was all. The crew did not look at Vale. The crew looked at Eastwood. He was 62 years old that March. He had been directing pictures since 1971. He had been on film sets since 1955. He had 38 years of accumulated authority and not one visible ounce of interest in performing it. He stood up from the chair. He set his coffee down on the arm of it. He walked, at his own speed, which was the speed of a man who has decided something and sees no reason to hurry because the deciding is already done, to where Marcus Vale was standing at his mark. He stopped. He looked at Vale for a moment. Not long. The look did not require duration to carry its weight. Then he said 4 words. These are my crew. He said it the way a man states a fact about the weather or the time of day, not with heat, not with warning, with the simple geological finality of something that has been true for a long time and will continue to be true after this conversation is over. He held the look for 1 more second, then he turned and walked back to his chair. He sat down. He picked up his coffee. He looked at Sandra Birch. He said, "Whenever you're ready." Sandra Birch looked at the first assistant camera. She said, "Stand by." The crew went to their positions. Marcus Vale stood at his mark. The camera rolled. The second take ran 4 minutes and 12 seconds. It was, by the account of everyone present who has spoken about it in the years since, the best thing Marcus Vale did in the picture. Not because of any adjustment he made consciously, because something in him had shifted, some arrangement of priorities had been quietly reorganized, and it showed in the work the way certain things show in the work without the actor being entirely aware of what changed. Bernard Coles, who had been standing at his own mark throughout all of it, did not change a single thing. He had been the same from the first take. He would have been the same for the 15th. When the take ended, Eastwood watched the playback. He said, "That's the one. Moving on." The crew moved on. Nobody mentioned what had happened between the takes. Not Sandra Birch, not Doug Struthers, not the gaffer who had been adjusting the light 2 feet from Vale's mark. Nobody pulled anyone aside. Nobody made a note of it in any official capacity. It was absorbed into the day the way these things are absorbed on a set that knows what it is doing, without ceremony, without drama, as a closed matter. The gaffer's name was Pete Okafor. He had been working in the electrical department on film sets since 1979. He had worked 6 Malpaso productions. He was 44 years old that March, and he had been the man adjusting the light 2 feet from Marcus Vale's mark when the request to clear the set had been made. He had heard it. He had registered it the way a man registers a specific kind of weather, not with surprise, but with the quiet recognition that comes from having seen this particular cloud formation before. He had also heard the 4 words. He had been on sets where those words were never said. He had worked for directors who let that kind of request stand, who reorganized the crew around an actor's comfort, who treated the people who built the light and carried the cable as features of the background rather than the architecture of the whole enterprise. He knew what it meant when those words were not said. He also knew what it meant when they were. He mentioned it once, years later, to his daughter, who was studying film production at San Francisco State. He told her the whole story, the request, the chair, the walk, the 4 words, the second take. She asked him, "Did the actor change after that?" Pete Okafor thought about it. He said, "Yes and no." He said Vale was never quite the same on set after day 14. Not smaller, just more present, less elsewhere. Like a man who has been reminded of something he already knew and had started to remember. His daughter asked, "What do you think the 4 words meant?" Pete Okafor was quiet for a moment. He said, "They meant that the people who build the light are part of the picture, not the furniture, not the noise, the picture." He looked at her. Every director says they believe that. Most of them mean it. That one lived it. His daughter went on to work in the grip and electric department on 22 pictures over the following decade. She told her own crews the story when she thought they needed to hear it. She always told it the same way, starting with the chair, the creak of the canvas, the walk, the 4 words. "These are my crew. Keep your eyes open, your words few, and never stray from what's right." That's Clint's way.